Okay, ladies and gents, Brett Miller again from Metal Guitar Academy. So, I'm going to be doing a lesson today all about intervals. Some of this stuff that doesn't seem the most exciting or sexy, it's some of the most important stuff, because really what's going on is it's affecting everything. Okay, intervals are one of the absolute building blocks of music, and they have quite a bit to do with power chords and heavy riffs and more modern stuff. So we'll be delving into that today as well. And so first thing we have to talk about, well, what are intervals? When I play stuff like this, just making up a little riff like that. These are not chords, these are intervals. So let's see. Going to start with a definition of what intervals are. Okay, so the definition of interval, by the way, this is all covered in a lot of other Metal Guitar Academy stuff, and it's so important, the repetition here. Okay, intervals. An interval is simply the distance in pitch, okay, the highness or the lowness of the sound, between two notes. That's it. So you could randomly play any two notes you want to on the guitar. That's a certain sound, that's a certain interval that has a name. I could have all of these are very recognizable, learnable, memorizable. Okay. Now, just some basics, right? Okay. In music, of course, we have 7 letters of the alphabet that we use to identify pitches: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I bring it back to A because it would just repeat higher, higher, higher up into infinity if we could just hear that high. Okay, now there's never any H note, you've never heard anything like that, so G is it, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? Now, if I were to play these notes, these would be a series of what we call either whole steps or half steps. Okay, a half step is on the guitar movement by 1 fret. So if you're on one string and you're moving 1 fret either forwards or backwards, you're playing a half step. And in music, it is the absolute smallest interval, right? There's no shorter distance on the guitar than just moving by 1 fret. Okay, if you think of a piano keyboard, it'd be when you had the 2 white keys right next to each other, no black key in between. Okay, smallest interval. Whole step is simply 2 frets on the guitar. So that would be movement by 2 frets. Right? Now, coming up here, in music, this is universal, not just for guitar. Most of these are going to be whole steps. A to B is a whole step. However, sometimes one note to another is going to automatically be a half step. B to C is one of those. Okay. C to D is automatically a whole step. See, if no one tells you that, you're not going to know just by looking, right? There's no way to tell unless someone tells you, hey, B to C is automatically just a half step, that's smaller sound. C to D is a whole step. Most of these are whole. D to E is a whole step. E to F is another half step. These are good to memorize. B to C, E to F, automatically half step. Again, on a piano keyboard, 2 white keys, that pair would be B to C, other pair would be E to F. Okay, F to G is whole, G to A is whole. So most of these are whole steps. Okay, so if we were to play that, right, this is what we would have. We would have I'm just checking something here. we would have these notes. If I just play A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, okay, A, B, see it's a whole step, 2 frets, C, half step, D, whole step, E, whole step, F, half step, G, whole step, A. Now I knew that was an A because I simply did the same thing. E, open, F, half step, G, whole step, A, whole step. All right? Again, a lot of this is covered in even greater detail in most of the Metal Guitar Academy material. I love to go over this over and over again, though, with people because it's so important. All right? Now, obviously, you could see here that we were skipping over some frets, right? The ones that weren't the automatic half steps. Like if I went A to B, of course, we got this fret in between. What do we call that? We call that A sharp. That's what you call an in-between note. We call these accidentals, sharps, and you've probably heard of flats. Obviously, a sharp raises a note by 1 half step, or 1 fret on the guitar. If I went B flat, that means I'm going down 1 fret. Notice A sharp and B flat, exact same thing. Okay, so it just really matters which way you're going. Okay, there's a little more to which one you would choose, but in general, that's how you think about it. If you're trending up, you would go A sharp. If you're trending down, you would go B flat. Now, if we were to write out all of, where's my tab? If we were to write out all of the possible notes, okay, including those sharp and flat notes, all right? Well, let me do this first, okay? Actually, before I do that, let's take a look at these guys again, okay? Now, intervals, other than being called half step and whole step, those two smallest ones, generally we're going to refer to them as numbers, okay? So you might have heard of, oh, I'm going to play a third, or I'm going to play a fifth, or a seventh, something like that. Where do those numbers come from? Well, it's simply how many notes you are traveling through. For example, if I were to play let's say a third from A, okay? Well, remember, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, those are your letters. So you always count your starting note as 1. It's good to just do this on your fingers. So A, B, C. We'd call that a third. So A to C is a third. It's as simple as that. A, B. We determined a moment ago that's a whole step. Another way to say that is we call that a second. A, B. How about if I did a fifth? Easy. A, B, C, D, E. Got it? So we have intervals all the way up to a seventh. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A to G would be a seventh. Right? So that's generally where you get these numbers from. You're simply starting with a note, you're thinking about the letters in order, and you're just determining how many notes you're going through. That's going to be your interval. Now, of course, like a lot of things in life and guitar, there's a bit more to it than that. But that's what we're going to get into right now. But that is the most important thing to think about with intervals, okay? You're simply calling it however many notes you are moving through. Okay? Each of those would, of course, have a unique sound to it. Intervals are fantastic to memorize the sound because really is great for helping you learn songs by ear, for coming up with your own stuff, etc. Okay? So now, if we were to write, and I'm going to do this with sharps first, if we were to write all the notes, including all the sharps, okay? I'm now writing everything where it's just half steps. Boom. Notice the B and the C, and the E and the F, okay? Those are automatically half steps, remember. So how many notes do we have total now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different notes until we come back to our starting note, which we happen to call the octave. You've probably heard that term before. So we have 12 possible notes, okay, which is why we have 12 frets until you reach the same. You probably notice if you play guitar at all that your open string sounds like your 12th fret. So there's no magic there. It's because we have 12 possible half steps. Like so. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting because, as you can see, we said before, hey, if I wanted to go, let's say, A to C, okay? How's that? Did that with a mouse. Well, A to C, we said the easy way, A, B, C, it's a third, right? Because you're going through 3 different letters, certainly. But it gets a little more complicated when we realize that, hey, you have a choice here. Could you go A to C? Or could you also go A to C sharp? You can, of course, do both, right? If we're talking about letters, any A to any C is going to be 3 letters. A, B, C, A, B, C sharp. These are both thirds. So what do? Well, intervals have different flavors to them. Okay? So let's start with this third. Okay, A to C is a bit closer than A to C sharp, isn't it? We call this a minor third. Minor being a little bit closer. I generally like to write that as like little m3. Okay. A to C sharp, since it's a little bigger, right? It's bigger by a half step, the distance, we call that a major third. This is how we differentiate, and I usually write that as big M3. This is how we differentiate between, you know, the intervals here. Any kind of A to any kind of C technically is a third, A, B, C, right? But since we have these 2 possibilities, A, B, C or A, B, C sharp, we have to have 2 flavors, so to speak, of the interval. Okay? So we can really distinctly hear the difference with the third. This is why I'm starting with the third. Okay? A, B, C, right? So if I play the A to the C, very distinctive, kind of dark kind of a sound. Okay, this is sort of the quintessential, what we call minor sound. But if we go A, B, C sharp, again, it's the third. Why? Because 3 letters. A, B, C sharp still counts. That has a very distinctly different sound. Very recognizable. Okay, that's what we call a major third, and that's sort of the quintessential major sound. If I play a little major chord, that's what makes it a major. Has that same A to C sharp in this case. Okay, so you do have those different flavors of third. Most intervals, with the exception of a couple, which just have different names basically, but the concept is the same, most intervals are going to have a major facet, a little bit bigger, and also a minor facet, a little bit smaller. The letters will stay the same. Here's one more example of that. What if we take a look at back up here. What if we did A to F versus A to F sharp? Okay, so keep that in mind. We're doing A to F sharp. Well, just in terms of the letters, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. We know it's what we would call a sixth because simply the letters A, B, C, D, E, F. Good to do this on your fingers. Okay. 6 notes, right? But of course, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp would also be 6 notes. So therefore, we call A to F the minor 6, okay? Because it's a little bit closer. That's how that would sound. Again, very recognizable when you put a name to these things. Allows you to really just memorize the sounds a lot easier. That's a minor 6. A to F sharp, still 6 notes away, 6 letters, but now that little extra half step makes that a little bit bigger. Call that a major 6. Okay? Now this kind of introductory lesson is not going to be exhaustive, all right, into all the intervals, but I want to give you that you know, sort of that foundation there, that you're going to have these variations on the intervals, but you're still just really thinking about it as, hey, how many notes away is it? How many letters is it? Okay. Now, how does this relate to power chords? Well, I have a very broad view of power chords. Okay, your what we call kind of your classic power chord, right? That kind of a thing. That's just that one shape. I'm sure you've played it before if you play guitar. Maybe you haven't. It's okay if you're just starting out. But it's first finger, ring finger, usually E and A string, also very common on those 2 strings. You can do it here too. Now, power chord is a slang term. I won't get into that too much right now. It's not really a chord, okay, but it is an interval, isn't it? Why? Because it's 2 notes. So if I have a note here and I have a note here, by definition, that's an interval. It's a jump, it's a leap. So what is it? Well, if we're doing A again, let's use our fingers. A, B, C, D, E. Those are just the notes I'm playing. If you do a classic power chord here starting on the A, that note happens to be an E. A, B, C, D, E. So if we just reverse engineer that starting from the A, B, C, D, E. Okay, that's why we call it a fifth. Fifths are a little weird. We call them, instead of major and minor, we call them perfect or augmented, that kind of a thing. So again, I'm not going to get into all that today. I don't want to confuse you, but just keep in mind it's really the same idea. Okay, if I did an E flat, for example, A, B, C, D, E flat, still technically 5 letters away, but it's a little closer. We call that a diminished fifth. Okay, so you don't need to worry about all the terminology today. Just keep the concept in mind that it's 5 letters away, A to E something, and depending on whether it's a little closer or a little farther away, all right, we call it, you know, again, major and minor, or in this case, perfect or diminished. Same idea. So if you can get some heavy sounds with that fifth, there's no reason in the world that you can't consider other intervals to really just be power chords. Okay, and you hear this in a lot more kind of modern metal stuff. So, for example, let's take a look. Right? Remember, these are all of our half steps here, all the way to A. Well, what if I did kind of a really dissonant, kind of evil sounding one, kind of cool? I'm going to do either a second, which remember is going to be the same thing as a whole step. It's a pretty common way to say a second. A to B, okay? A, B. Now this is where I do have to do this, okay? I'm going to simply write the same thing out as above, but I'm going to do it using flats instead of sharp, okay? Again, B to C automatically a half step, so that's why there's nothing in between there. Okay. E to F automatically a half step, that's why there's nothing in between there. Back to A. Still 12 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 until we return to the starting note. This is exactly the same as this. A sharp, notice it's a half step above the A, it would be 1 fret above the A, is exactly the same as a B flat. A to B flat, that would just be 1 fret higher, right? So whether I go like this, A sharp, or a B flat like that, A sharp, A, B flat, same exact thing, exact same thing. So why am I doing that when I'm talking about the second? Well, hey, what's going on, Manuel? It's awesome, man. I wish I could, you know, for some reason the chats aren't like showing up on the actual chat box here. I got to try and figure that out. Good to see you, my friend. I see you on my, I see your comment on my screen over here. I wish it was coming up here. We'll have to fix that. Anyway, now, yes, so if I've got A to B, we call that a second, all right, or a whole step. A to B flat is only a half step, it's closer. So we call that a minor second. So if we get a little bit more detail with it, a little more granular, A to B is a major second, we would call that. A to B flat, we call that a minor second. All right? Now, we do have these terms that we call melodic intervals, where if I played those notes separately, kind of like a melody, right? Because you have more than one. Hey, there you go. Thanks for following, man. What we have at that point is one note after the other, like a melody, right? In a melody, you don't have two notes at the same time. You have something one after the other. Now, we also have something called harmonic intervals, though. That would simply be if I played the A and the B at the same time, and this is where we get into power chord territory, okay? So if I played A, and then B up here, A, B, at the same time, again, to a lot of people that might sound a bit more dissonant, but we hear that a lot in modern metal stuff. Okay, now there's no difference at all. The sound is different, obviously, but in terms of its of the kind, okay, in terms of its kind, there's no difference between doing a normal power chord that has two notes or this, right? It's not a real chord; it's an interval. But I'm just choosing a little bit more of a, you know, interesting, I think it's a little more interesting sound. So we would call that a major second. A to B flat, remember, you can think of it as a half step, but we can also call it a minor second. And so, if I played this, more of a stretch, A to B flat, B flat. Here's a major second, B to C sharp. So these are kind of interesting, right? You might hear that kind of a Kind of weird, you know, alien kind of a sound there. That might be kind of Meshuggah-ish a little bit. You know, of course, they're playing lower 8-string guitars. Hey, Josie Rocks, thanks for following. I appreciate that. So if we go back here, we can see that you could really take any two notes here. This is what's so cool about this. All right, and again, I'm not, you know, there's more to it here. We're just gonna probably leave this about a half an hour lesson here today. But you could literally take, if I'm just using A here, we could of course start with any note and do all 12 of the sharps and all the flats here. But we could take A and we could jump to any note we want. What if I went to a D sharp? Okay, A to D sharp. Well, count on our fingers. A, B, C, D. So we know that's a fourth, right? Again, the fourth is like the fifth. Throwing a little monkey wrench in here. We call that perfect, or we call it D sharp augmented, okay? It's the same kind of thing as major and minor. It's really the same concept. But if I go A to D sharp, same amount of letters, clearly it's 1/2 step bigger, okay? So if I was going to play that interval, this is what we're going to have. A, here's a D sharp. How do I know? A, B, C, D, D sharp. Okay, knowing your notes is one of the most important things you could possibly learn on the guitar. So, cool. Pretty cool. The band Corner comes to mind, man. They're old school thrash metal band from Switzerland. I love Corner. I think they really were a big influence on a lot of bands that you don't hear about them a lot. But they would really do a lot of power chords back then that were non-standard. They liked this one, this augmented fourth sound. So instead of going normal power chords, often they might have like a lot more interesting. So this idea of intervals, when you start playing with them, I did a major second, A to B. I did a minor second, B to C, right? B to C is just a half step. So I'm just playing them together. And then I decided to go A to E, normal power chord, A, B, C, D, E, a fifth. F, A, B, C, D, E, F. That's what we call a minor 6. F sharp would have been a major 6. Okay? What I'm kind of doing here, to make it sound sort of coherent, and I'll probably just leave you guys with this, is there's more to this. We'll talk about this maybe in a different lesson in the future. But what I'm kind of trying to do when I'm doing that riff, to give it a little more coherence, okay, is I'm really just sticking with these notes here. This would be a minor scale if I just played those notes. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. It's an A minor scale, right? So when I'm playing that riff, I'm going A to B. Notice that would be those two notes in the scale. That's a second. Then I went B to C. That's those two, so they're in the scale. This is going to be a minor second, though, or a half step. And then I went to, what did I go to here? A to E. Okay. And then I went A to F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm playing with these intervals, and they sound fairly coherent, simply because I'm sticking with only that set of notes, okay, in the scale. You don't have to do that, but the more you stray from that, the more it's going to start sounding, kind of like a little more out there stuff, like your death metals or your, things like that, which is fine. But you can get still pretty weird. Something like that, I'm just making it up, right? But if you take your time with it, it's going to sound a bit more interesting than just someone going like this all the time. Not knocking that, it has its place, but you can tell that's a little bit more, I don't know, traditional, old school, whatever you want to call it. So, all right, that's it. Hope you got something interesting out of that. And I'm going to see you guys pretty soon. Again, my goal is to do a lesson like this. I'm also live streaming some practice stuff generally before that here on the MGA Twitch channel. So my goal is to do this pretty much every day. Just do a lesson of my choice, okay, topic of my choice. I encourage you guys, please follow. I'm trying to get to 50 people. I'm kind of new on this platform. MGA's Metal Guitar Academy is pretty new on the Twitch platform. So trying to get to the 50 follower mark so I can unlock that subscribe button, okay, to encourage people to subscribe and support the channel, support Metal Guitar Academy. But in the meantime,